You're listening to the Bare Metal Cyber Prepcast, created to help you succeed in your PMP certification journey. Learn more at baremetalcyber.com, where additional prepcasts, books, and training materials await. Let's get started. Adaptive risk matters because speed without guardrails creates rework, missed compliance, and brittle outcomes. We want velocity that doesn't invite downstream fires. Integrating detection, decision, and action into the team's cadence turns surprises into short, manageable experiments instead of multi-week crises. The practical outcome is earlier handling of threats and opportunities with traceable evidence, so leaders can choose trade-offs informed by facts rather than by urgent anecdotal pressure. Lightweight governance rests on proportionality. Controls should match the level of risk and uncertainty, not blanket every activity with the heaviest possible process. Transparency is essential. Policies, decision rights, and thresholds must be visible so people know what to expect. Repeatability wins. Simple playbooks for common cases beat heroic ad hoc fixes. When controls are proportional, transparent, and repeatable, teams can move quickly while clear rules limit organizational exposure. Make risks first-class backlog citizens. Give each material risk an owner, a clear trigger, an explicit mitigation action, and a verification step. Time-box short spikes to test critical unknowns and convert assumptions into facts quickly. Treat the spike's outcome as evidence, not opinion. Keep a concise dashboard of the top 5 program risks and review them at each cadence event so the team's attention focuses on what will actually change delivery or compliance in the near term. Guardrails and decision rights convert ambiguity into safe autonomy. Publish thresholds for when teams may act and when they must escalate, and define emergency authority with short SLAs for response. Map who decides what scope, cost, schedule, quality, and risk, so people stop guessing. Keep a living decision log that records rationale and links to evidence. That record reduces repeated debates and supports audits without heavy paperwork. The goal is predictable escalation, not bureaucratic delay. Embed controls directly in workflow, so checks are part of doing the work rather than separate obstacles. Add necessary compliance and security steps into the definition of done and into automated pipelines so evidence accumulates naturally. Use change policies for backlog and baseline updates. Don't improvise approvals in email threads, and capture formal approvals once, then link them as the single source of truth. This minimizes redundant work while preserving traceability. Metrics should be chosen to drive action, not theater. Track risk burn down, trigger hits, and response effectiveness so you know whether mitigations are working. Early warning signals like WIP creep, aging items, and defect spikes often precede bigger troubles. Surface them in dashboards that leaders actually use. Heat maps for steerco should be action-oriented, showing which risks need decisions now rather than providing long lists that nobody reads. Metrics are useful only when they lead to specific, small experiments. PESL political, economic, social, technological, legal, environmental scans help teams anticipate external pressures that affect risk appetite and control needs. Run a brief PESL check periodically to spot shifts that warrant guardrail tuning, and prepare pre-approved evidence packs and exception logs for likely scenarios so approvals don't stall. Keep vendor oversight practical. Include flow-down clauses, reasonable right-to-audit terms, and mirrored artifacts so external partners feed the same single source of truth the team uses. Design the operating model so risk handling fits the delivery rhythm. Short cycles for detection and small reversible actions for mitigation. Where uncertainty exists, favor time-boxed experiments that either reduce risk or provide a clear basis for escalation. Dashboard the top risks, assign owners, and put short review points in the cadence so the organization treats risk management as continuous delivery work instead of an occasional audit. This routine makes handling risk a normal part of delivery. Decision rights must be explicit and usable. Publish a simple matrix that lists decision class, default owner, escalation threshold, and required impact analysis elements. Require an impact analysis before action when escalating, a concise statement of affected scope, schedule, cost, quality, and residual risk, so decisions are fast and informed. Capture the decision and its rationale in the log immediately, linking evidence so later reviewers see the cause and effect rather than reconstructing events from memory. The smallest sufficient control principle keeps governance lean. Choose the minimum intervention that reduces unacceptable risk rather than the maximum control you could imagine. For example, a small automated security scan in CI/CD may be the smallest sufficient control for many changes, avoiding heavyweight pen testing for trivial updates. That discipline avoids overgovernance and preserves flow while still achieving the organization's safety objectives. Time-box spikes and experiments to buy down uncertainty and capture learning quickly. Treat their outputs as evidence to either retire the risk or to justify a scaled control. Each spike should end with a clear deliverable, a test result, a prototype, or a decision recommendation that feeds the decision log. This short-cycle learning keeps the program flexible and reduces the temptation to over-engineer controls in the absence of real data. Keep approvals efficient by preparing pre-approved evidence packs for common exception types so reviewers get decision-ready artifacts rather than sifting through raw logs. An evidence pack might contain a one-page summary, test artifacts, residual risk notes, and a proposed remediation timeline. Requiring a consistent pack reduces back and forth and speeds decisions, while ensuring reviewers have what they need to judge trade-offs responsibly. Embed change policies in the workflow so scope and baseline updates follow the same signal path as normal work. Raise a change card, attach the impact analysis, route per published thresholds, capture approval once, and link the approval to affected backlog items. This practice prevents ad hoc, undocumented shifts and keeps the single source of truth current, without adding separate bureaucratic layers that slow teams down. Finally, review governance effectiveness at each cadence event and tune controls to the current risk profile. If a control routinely fires false positives, simplify it. If a previously low-risk area has become volatile due to external shifts, raise appropriate guardrails but keep them proportional. The steady habit of publish, scan, analyze, act within policy, and log evidence keeps flow moving while ensuring the organization learns and adapts. Adaptive risk metrics only matter if they support decisions that keep value flowing. A risk burn-down chart shows whether the set of identified risks is shrinking as mitigations are applied, staying flat because they remain unresolved, or climbing because new threats are entering the register. Trigger hits reveal how often predefined signals have fired, such as a backlog item aging past its threshold, a supplier missing a delivery milestone, or a quality metric dropping below its agreed minimum. Response effectiveness then measures whether the actions taken actually reduced probability or impact. When you present these metrics, speak them in plain language. We had 3 trigger hits this sprint, 2 mitigations worked, 1 failed. And then link each number directly to a clear follow-up decision. Early warning signals are particularly important because they buy time before problems escalate. Watching for creeping work in progress, aging backlog items that stall, or spikes and escape defects gives you a chance to intervene while options remain plentiful. The trick is to present these warnings as choices, not accusations. For example, if cycle time is rising, the option could be to tighten WIP limits, swarm on the oldest items, or dedicate a brief spike to uncovering the hidden dependency. Heat maps for steering committees should highlight these warnings with colors that correspond to decisions required, not just to relative risk levels. By framing the chart as a decision board, these 3 risks need an action this week, you avoid report theater and make the evidence actionable. Metrics should be shared with the smallest audience necessary and in the simplest form that triggers a decision. Over-reporting breeds noise, while under-reporting blinds decision-makers. Keep the charts light. A single slide that shows current exposure, recent changes, and the specific next steps recommended. Pair that with a decision log entry that records what was agreed and what evidence supported it. This practice not only creates accountability, but also reduces relitigation later, when stakeholders ask why a choice was made. The guiding principle is clarity. The right metric, read the right way, linked to the right action, and stored once as evidence in the single source of truth. External pressures often shift the risk landscape in ways teams cannot control. So lightweight scanning across political, economic, social, technological, legal, and environmental factors. PESTLE, in short, is essential. Political changes might include new government policies or trade restrictions. Economic shifts may affect vendor stability. Social trends could alter stakeholder expectations. Technological advances bring both vulnerabilities and opportunities. Legal changes create compliance obligations, and environmental pressures raise sustainability requirements. These categories need not be studied exhaustively, but they should be reviewed regularly in cadence so you are not surprised by outside shifts. Keep scans practical and focus only on factors that can realistically affect delivery, compliance, or reputation. When external factors demand evidence, prepare pre-approved packs so approvals do not stall the flow of work. A standard evidence pack might include a one-page summary, test or inspection results, the risk trigger observed, and a short list of remedial actions taken. Exception logs should also be maintained so deviations from policy are recorded once and linked everywhere they matter. This practice reduces confusion, prevents shadow agreements, and ensures auditors or governance bodies can see how and why decisions were taken under unusual circumstances. Lightweight does not mean casual. It means evidence is captured cleanly the first time, stored in one place, and made visible to all relevant stakeholders. Vendor oversight must also be embedded without becoming obstructive. Contracts should include flow-down clauses that require suppliers to meet the same control standards, right to audit terms that are proportionate, and mirrored artifacts so supplier evidence lands in your repository automatically. By doing this, vendor governance becomes part of normal flow rather than a separate compliance exercise. The project team gains early visibility into supplier performance and risks, while the vendor is clear about expectations from the outset. Lightweight governance here means designing oversight so it rides on the same rails as delivery, producing transparency without introducing an additional reporting industry around the vendor relationship. Imagine a scenario where a critical vulnerability is disclosed in a widely used library, while the team is mid-iteration. The choices are stark: ignore the issue and ship on time, halt all work until a full fix is complete, escalate upward without a plan, or follow the expedite policy. The best choice is to apply the expedite path that was already published, beginning with a brief impact analysis to frame the risk clearly. Then patch the minimal viable scope needed to close exposure, capture evidence of the action taken, and review the change at the next governance checkpoint. This preserves cadence, maintains trust, and proves that the system of guardrails and playbooks is functioning as intended. The strongest distractor in this case is halting all work until a full remediation is complete. While thorough, it often causes unnecessary disruption and delays that outweigh the risk, especially if the vulnerability can be partially mitigated quickly. Ignoring the issue outright is unacceptable because it leaves exposure undocumented, and escalating without a plan places the burden on sponsors without equipping them to act. By contrast, the expedite policy embodies the principle of smallest sufficient control. Act decisively, document responsibly, and keep flow moving while preserving governance visibility. This scenario demonstrates how impact analysis before action turns chaos into manageable, auditable response. On the exam, pitfalls often probe extremes. One is escalating immediately without presenting options or analysis. That shows a lack of servant leadership and fails to use decision rights responsibly. Another is overgovernance, where so many approvals are required that the flow throttles itself. Agile governance must be proportional, not maximal. A third is failing to capture evidence for exceptions or approvals, leaving no audit trail. This undermines trust even if the decision was sound. Finally, ignoring upside risks, opportunities that could accelerate value or reduce cost, is a mistake. Adaptive risk considers both threats and opportunities because both require deliberate handling. Expect test items to highlight these traps and ask you to choose the balanced, evidence-backed path. To apply adaptive risk and lightweight governance daily, follow a practical playbook. First, publish guardrails so decision rights, thresholds, and emergency paths are visible. Second, scan continuously for signals, both internal like WIP creep and external like a new regulation. Third, analyze before acting by writing a short impact statement that frames scope, cost, schedule, quality, and risk. Fourth, act within the published policy, choosing the smallest sufficient control that resolves the issue. Fifth, log the evidence once in the single source of truth, linking it to backlog items and approvals. Finally, review these logs at regular cadence events, tuning controls to current risks. This loop keeps governance lean while ensuring flow is not sacrificed in the name of safety. Lightweight governance does not mean lax governance. It means designing controls that earn their place by being both sufficient and efficient. Teams must see governance as a partner in delivery, not a hurdle. Leaders must insist on impact analysis before action, not as bureaucracy, but as a thinking discipline that forces clarity. Evidence must be captured once and reused everywhere, so audit trails are strong but unobtrusive. Adaptive risk is therefore less about fancy frameworks and more about disciplined habits. Publish clear rules, act within them, document once, and learn continuously. That rhythm balances agility with assurance in a way that protects both flow and accountability. Thanks for tuning in to the Bare Metal Cyber Prepcast, your trusted source for cybersecurity news and insights. Remember to subscribe at baremetalcyber.com so you never miss an update. And visit cyberauthor.me for best-selling cybersecurity books that equip you with expert knowledge. Until next time, stay secure and stay vigilant.